Hey, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm good, brother. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you guys for coming. We're going to be getting into our fourth episode, I believe, of our 32 team breakdown. Welcome to the Put Me in Coach podcast. Excited to
Yes,
have you
sir.
here. Thank you guys, everybody who's liked and subscribed and commented and anything you guys have done. We really appreciate it. We're fired up about putting this content out. So the more you guys watch, the more we get to do. So thank you guys.
Right, I got his flame sword.
So with Buffalo, I feel like it's this weird situation where it's this once again, kind of like Baltimore last week. It's this contender team that every year we get excited about. We kind of hope that this is the year they dethrone Kansas City.
No way. We got you. Not a chance. Not this time. It never happened.
Um, and it's just never been the year, right? So I think the theme of this video is going to kind of be like, is this the year? Do we feel like they did what they had to do this offseason to kind of
Sure.
make this the year that they like come out of the AFC and win it? So
Yeah.
we'll get to it. I guess that question will be answered by the end of this video.
Yes, it will.
Going back to last season, which wasn't the year, once again.
No.
Um,
No. Never is
Good
it?
team. Good team.
Yeah.
11-6, first in the AFC East.
Mm-hmm.
Finished the regular season with 5 straight wins, which I thought was really cool. And honestly, in terms of last season, something I really wanted to get into right away because I think it's kind of an interesting theme with this team, an interesting
Sure.
topic at least. It's almost like it was a tale of two seasons last year. I felt
Mm-hmm.
like the team. So after the Week 10 loss to Denver in Buffalo, it was a Monday night game. It was just ugly. It felt like Denver shouldn't have won, and then they did, and it was like, what's going on with this team? They fired Ken Dorsey.
Yep.
Fired their offensive coordinator, um, and the team then went on to go 6-1, and actually almost went 7-0, but lost an overtime game to Philadelphia last year, and kind of a heartbreaker. It was a real like Hurts versus Allen like explosion game. It was a lot of fun,
Sure.
but it seemed like the offense took a huge step forward in efficiency and finishing drives under Joe Brady, who was really hired from within. He was the quarterbacks coach, so
Yeah.
um, it felt like Kincaid started to get involved. It felt like, you know, the running game was all of a sudden becoming efficient, right? They went from being this horrible, inefficient, lack of explosion run game,
Yeah.
and they keep James Cook. It's the same guy, and then all of a sudden James Cook is being efficient and making plays, and it's like
Sure.
it was such an interesting thing because Joe Brady was in the building the whole time, and I sort of wonder, and I wonder how Buffalo fans feel about this.
Yeah.
What the hell was this man looking at that like he just saw this roster and was like, I'm gonna tweak a
Yeah.
couple of things and like all of a sudden we're gonna go like basically 7-0 into the playoffs and like
Yeah.
be good. And I mean they were 31st in field goals up until that point to start the season. So it's like they were just stalling out. After they got
Yeah.
to, they would have a big play, they would get to, in scoring position, expected points, right? That whole analytics thing. And then instead of getting a field goal or getting a touchdown, it was just either a touchdown or nothing. And they
Yeah.
just felt like they were losing these close games. So I kind of want to touch on that and get your thoughts because it's an interesting thing going into this year, right? They keep Joe Brady. He's still on the team. He's still their OC. And they're kind of riding up a bit of a hot streak offensively.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Joe Brady's gonna be he's gonna be pivotal to this offense. He's gonna be pivotal to this team. I think
Right.
we saw last year him come in and sort of I won't say like fully exile Stefon Diggs, but he was definitely like spreading the ball around a lot more with his scheme.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, we will, but
Yep.
that's why I said I don't want to jump too much into it. But
No, but you're right. It was part of it.
it was
Yeah.
interesting to see down the stretch to kind of watch him change up this whole scheme, go with much more of like a offense, like a committee offense, opposed to like a Allen Diggs. It was refreshing to see, honest to God, because it had been years of that, and it was getting stale. It wasn't working. There's tensions flaring up between the two of them. There's always like, social media leaks or just fucking Steph Diggs going out there and being like, LOL, trade me. It's like, all right, dude. What else do you want? You know what I mean? So yeah, I've always liked Joe Brady though. I think Joe Brady, he was the mastermind of that unbelievable LSU offense when in 2019 when they won the national championship. And then, he I think he was put in kind of an impossible situation in Carolina when he took that OC job. I don't think he was not ready for it. I just don't think they had, frankly, like any talent on that team. So it's hard, it's hard to work with that. And maybe it was just too much for him to, he was biting off more than he could chew. But he ate the humble pie, if you will, and went and took a kind of a lesser job with the Bills and has now worked his way up to OC. And you have probably the most talented quarterback in the NFL. So, this is your time to shine. I think he will. I think it's going to be really interesting watching him move forward. I expect them to have a high power offense next year. Even with the lack of Diggs, I still, when you kind of look at all these weapons, and none of them are like flashy names, it's a lot of like these guys, you know what I mean? It's Curtis Samuel, it's MVS, it's Keon Coleman, who doesn't scream like wide receiver one to me. Screams more of a T Higgins type, more of like a very high end two. In the grand scheme of things, but I think he'll still be super effective, especially in like the red zone. You got Dalton Kincaid, you got Dawson Knox, who are both really good tight ends in my opinion. I feel like we just forgot that they paid Dawson Knox like 2 years ago, and then they just drafted Kincaid. It was like, all right, well, I guess that works. You guys are both pretty good. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this this offense comes out of the gates next year. They start the season pretty whatever. I think they have like an Arizona, Miami in there, a couple of like quote unquote easy games, if you will. And then like week 4 pops off, and for literally 11 weeks, it's an absolute gauntlet. So it'll be really interesting to see how the team kind of maneuvers in that stretch. Well, what do you think? What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think on that note, I think it's kind of important to segue into sort of what happened this offseason, because
of course,
depending on who you ask, they lost everybody, right? You've got the Nick Wrights of the world throwing like, I don't know if you caught that, like first things first, like funeral that he did for the Bills.
It's now over, and they have nothing to show for it.
Being like, it's over, the run's done. It's like, and then other people you ask, it's sort of like, well, I'm excited. I think they got younger. I think they're retooling. Like, I'm excited for the future. So it's an interesting situation, right? We'll start on defense, because for me, the losses aren't that huge of a deal defensively. And I'm seeing a lot of like, that's part of the narrative with like Bills critics. It's kind of like, they lost both their starting safeties. And I don't really understand. Maybe Bills fans can illuminate me. I'm a bit confused about this Micah Hyde. Like, did he retire? Did he not? The last we checked, he said it's Bills or nobody. But are the Bills like planning on bringing him back? So I'm not sure. They lost Jordan Poyer, who signed with the Dolphins, which is a sneaky loss, but Jordan Poyer's getting up there. He is. Tre'Davious White hasn't been healthy in 2 years. He signed with the Rams. Over. I'm not even sure he's going to get like, we'll see if even like that works out. They lost defensive end Jordan Phillips, who was kind of a rotational guy. He signed with the Giants. For me, last year defensively was much more of a tale of Matt Milano and AJ Espenza both getting injured, and that linebacking core being screwed. Not to mention the other guy that I'll lead you right into, Von Miller being injured. Not so much the losses of these. I don't think the losses of these, like, I don't want to say wash, but kind of getting up there long in the tooth safeties is going to be like the make or break thing. No. I like Matt Milano. He's getting older, but he's very much like a leader, a foundational
He's still,
defensive piece.
he's still very, 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 very solid.
AJ Espenza is a bummer because he was showing a lot of flash last year, and then he got hurt, and
Yeah.
it was kind of like, I mean, he was like all over the field like a utility guy, making
Yeah,
plays,
yeah.
kind of like that, just that guy, like a game. He almost had game-wrecking ability. So
Yeah.
to see him go down was a bummer, but he'll be coming back. One guy I want to talk about, because I think when we talk about this run, this almost run of Buffalo with Josh Allen, is
Sure.
maybe the villain of the story in an indirect, accidental way, but he's a villain nonetheless, right? It's sort of like he fell in
he
the
is.
cauldron, like woke up. He was like a nice guy who was like shuffling,
Yeah, right.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
sweeping up at the factory, and he
Fully.
like was like, whoa!
Fully.
Fell off and then like
Yeah.
woke up a
Yes.
supervillain. It's like he's
Yeah.
kind of
He's the
had
Green
that
Ranger.
effect.
How can I serve my empress?
Totally.
Yeah.
But it feels like the Von Miller contract was one of the worst signings ever.
Ever. Yeah.
What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on the Von Miller? Because we both kind of came across this during our research, and we were like, God, this looks so bad. He, like worse than it did.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't understand it. I mean, I'll never understand. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we chatted about it earlier, and I think the idea behind the Von Miller signing is that you felt that you were a Von Miller away from making that run. You were one championship championship winning Hall of Fame, defensive anchor / locker room staple away from winning the Super Bowl, beating
Right.
the Chiefs, getting there, holding up that trophy. You felt like, okay, this is the missing piece that we need, which is not like a bad thought in and in itself. The problem I have is that you paid a 33-year-old, 32-year-old, something
He
in
was
that nature.
33 when they signed him. He's
Yeah.
35 now.
Okay, you paid a 33-year-old $120 million for a 6-year contract. That's insane to me. What are we doing? You know what I mean? Like
With 51
this is
million
where-
guaranteed, but it's so.
This is
I mean,
where-
he won't hit he'll probably won't hit most of the incentives, so they won't end up
No.
paying him
And this
that
is-
much money. But like, why do it then?
Well, and then now it also affects these other players, right? It's like you can't
Yep.
really bring a Jordan Poyer back because you have to, you have to this money around because you gave Von Miller so much. And
Where's the rest? The money, Skylar. Where is the rest?
like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, guys, but your quarterback is going to be the first $60 million quarterback. So, you know what I mean? That's what it's going to be. I mean, Josh Allen, if Joe Burrow's getting, 55 a year, and you got guys like Jared Goff and Trevor Lawrence pushing 55, Josh Allen's getting 60 when it comes time. So you have to start thinking about that restructuring. You have to start thinking about, these other players, yada, yada, yada. You can't keep everybody. You can't keep the band together forever. We see it all the time. But this is where I look at Brandon Beane and I go, what exactly were you thinking here? Because you just watched Les Snead, who's a amazing GM,
Right.
buy low on Von Miller and use him for exactly what he needed him for. He said,
Right.
hey, I'm going to trade for you in the middle of the season because the team that you were on is dog water, basically. We're going to keep you through the end of the year. You're going to be pivotal to our Super Bowl run. And they fully won the Super Bowl and they just let him go. They didn't care. They were like, yeah, no, we don't need you anymore. We won the Super Bowl. We're not
Right.
going to, we have Aaron Donald. We're not going to retain you. We're going to give, we're going to give the Kobe contract to Aaron Donald and we'll be done with it. So,
Right.
you know what I mean? So I don't know. He hasn't been at all productive. He obviously, what was it? Like it was his ACL or Achilles, one of the two that he tore
I thought
the
it was
first
his
year.
ACL.
I thought it was too.
Yeah, I mean, he
couldn't
had 0
remember off the
sacks
top of
last
my
year
head.
either way.
He hasn't been.
So
He hasn't
whatever
been a
he was
factor even
doing, I don't
kind
know
of,
if he was even
because
healthy for most of the year. And then
shocker.
Yeah.
35-year-olds are not very good at football unless your
Yeah.
name is Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's just
Different
it's
thing
very
entirely.
it's very rare, especially when you're a defensive guy. I mean, you're in the mud every single play. You're not being protected by 5 giants, and zipping that ball out of there and trying. I mean, that was the joke with Brady for years. Like he hated getting hit. It's like, of course he did. He's old. Like those hits, those hits he was taking when he was 25, he can't take those at 35, and he definitely can't take them at 45.
Right.
So to think that Von Miller at 33, 34, 35 years old couldn't get in the mud with these 19-year-old giants who are playing left tackle and right tackle. I mean, it's insane to think that. So
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I think I think it was one of the worst signings of all time, and I fucking love Von Miller. I mean, do not get it twisted. I get it on paper. I do get it. Like he's a Hall of Fame first ballot, one of the best ever. But
Yeah.
it was bad. It was a bad move.
It's just a bummer because, it's so obvious to me that it was push all the chips in the middle of the table time that
100%.
offseason.
Yeah.
After what happened with Kansas City, I don't know if it was the first time or the second time. It's hard to keep track now.
Yeah.
But it was
Third
one
time,
of those
fourth time, fifth
seasons
time.
that they lost a close playoff game to Kansas City, and it felt like, okay, we're going to put all the moves in. It was just such the wrong version of that, right? Like,
Yep.
Vegas acquired Devontae Adams that offseason, right? The Dolphins acquired Tyreek Hill that offseason. There were big moves that were made that offseason that you look at and you go, maybe that was the move that you should have just been like,
Yeah.
you know what, F
Yeah.
it. We're throwing it in. I know we have Steph Diggs, but he's getting a little older. Let's just bring in
Yeah.
another guy. We're bringing Tyreek in. We're bringing Devon. We're going all the way. And it's
Yeah.
just like, I mean, even then, it's like you bring in a Von Miller for that contract. It's so disruptive to your salary situation that, like,
Silly, dude.
for nothing. I mean, it's just like he's not really been productive at all. He hasn't been a part of any run. There's been
At
no,
all.
and it's just like you think about it. I mean, Jadeveon Clowney was a free agent that offseason. Like, throw a couple
Yeah.
mil at Jadeveon Clowney and be like, let's just see. That's basically what you did, but for
You could have gotten
$200
Jadeveon
million.
Clowney for like
It's like, what the
$100
hell?
million less.
Yeah, I don't understand it. But we'll see. We'll see if he comes back this year and does something. I'm not holding my breath. It seems like it's over. I just feel like it's such a fatty L, and I think you're right. I think their GM has gotten such a pass from the media. He's never discussed as like a bad GM, and I look at a lot of these things and I'm like, this feels like me drunk after clubbing, playing Madden. And being like, you know what I mean? Like logging into your franchise and just being like still trashed and being like, I'm not ready for bed, and just like offering Odell Beckham like 5 years, $100 million guaranteed, and being like, we got
Hey,
Odell.
fuck it, I want you on the team. I want you on the
Yeah,
team.
just like stupid. It's
I
like,
gotta have my X receiver, bro. Come on.
right.
but
And
I'm with you.
it's just an odd move. Something that you touched on with shifting to the offense with free
Sure.
agency, a move that I feel like a lot of people aren't discussing is this starting center being gone. Speak
Yeah.
on it, because like I feel like the as well. It's a good player.
So everybody, I keep hearing, they lost Stefon Diggs. They lost Stefon Diggs. They lost Stefon Diggs. I feel like when I look at the team as a whole, I think the real loss was Mitch Morse, who was their Pro Bowl center, who he's 32 years old. He's had some concussion issues. I get it. I do get it. Right. You let's get younger. Let's move on. Yada yada yada. My problem that I have with it is that they replaced him with like a guard, and excuse me for a second while I look at my notes because I can't remember the kid's name. Connor McGovern. Okay, so he's Connor McGovern. He's a Penn State kid who played a lot of center in college, but has been in the league since I think 2019, and was taken by the Cowboys and was just like behind Zach Martin forever, and then came over here and has kind of been like a depth piece for them, like guard.
He's a nobody. Who
Sometimes
is
center.
this? Yeah,
Exactly. So then
he's a nobody. This guy.
So now, he's going over and he's going to be your starting center, even though his natural position is guard. So to me, that's not a real succession plan. I look at the draft and it's like, yeah, obviously you had a need for wide receiver, but I mean, Jackson Powers Johnson makes a lot more sense there now, especially when I know that you traded out of that pick like twice, and it's like, well, okay, you couldn't have used any of these like high valued centers that were in the draft, like especially late in that range. To me, it's very odd. I mean, the consensus with this guy is that he was like kind of the dad of the locker room, the OG, like somebody that Josh had a really good relationship with. So why are you fucking with that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I'm not I'm not trying to call him like Jeff Saturday and say that Josh Allen's Peyton Manning, but it's like you see how these connections work. You see the Jason Kelsey's of the world with the Jalen Hurts. You see the Jeff Saturdays and the Peyton Mannings. Like when a center and Ragnow and Goff, and it's like when you see a center who a good center at that have a good connection with your quarterback, like just don't fuck with it. Just don't fuck with it unless he's like washed, right? I mean, if he's totally washed and he's trash, whatever. I think this was more of like a cap casualty because of the Von Miller contract that we were just talking about.
Such a bummer.
And it is a bummer because I mean, you made him the highest paid center in the league, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and now he's
kind of delivered.
That tells me he totally delivered, and that also tells me like, okay, you're a Bill for life. We're trying to lock you down for like the rest of your career. And instead they let him walk, and he goes to Jacksonville, dude. Like Jacksonville is a team that absolutely needs that guy. And Jacksonville's a team that you're probably going to have to see in the playoffs. You're both kind of in that same boat.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, who knows what's going on over there? But I agree, it was a sneaky good
you know what I
signing
mean?
from
No, it's
Jacksonville
like
that flew under the radar.
I could see Jacksonville sneaking into the playoffs. I could see the Bills making the playoffs and them being a wild card team. Like they might have to play each other. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's not crazy. So I don't know.
And it's not
I think
crazy.
that's like truly.
Yeah.
I think that's your big loss on offense. I don't think it's. I think it's your center, Mitch Morse.
Yeah, and I mean, I think people talked more about Gabe Davis signing with Jacksonville than they did.
Because nobody cares. Nobody cares about
like
offensive
very
linemen.
high level. No, I understand that, but it's part of my frustration with like narrative in general. It's like, okay, I get it. It's not as fun. Like I'm a wide receiver guy. I like to talk about skill players and stuff, but it's like at some point, like there has to be some accountability with the media of being like, can you guys give us some information, because nobody even knows this guy like went to Jacksonville, and it's a big piece of like what's been the foundational, kind of like big chess piece for them for years during the Josh Allen era. It's like, well, he doesn't have a starting center now. I don't care about Gabe Davis. They replaced him with free agency in the draft. Like Gabe Davis is nothing. I think an interesting thing to talk about. We will get to kind of the free agent headline, but before we get to him, I do want to touch on our expectations for Josh this year, because I feel like it is such an interesting season compared to what we've seen, right? Like you mentioned these players, but I don't think it can be overstated how sort of like, I don't want to say ragtag, but just unknown this unit is, right? There's a lot of talent. I mean, they just brought in MVS from Kansas City.
Good protection, aired out. Valdez Scantling dropped it.
So you've got some speed there, but he's not a sure-handed receiver. He's got issues. I mean, I don't love it, but I think if you're going from Mahomes to Allen, it's like talk about failing up. It's like,
right.
I guess it's like, we're done with you here. He's like, well, I'll just go play with Josh Allen. It's like, really?
MVS is a kingmaker, man. He's a kingmaker.
MVS is he's the Quentin Johnson of the East now.
That's real.
He's the GOAT. But I mean, I don't want to trash him too much. He can make plays. I mean, you've got you brought in Curtis Samuel, who I think is actually underrated. He suffered a lot in Washington, but he's really good underneath. He's good with the ball in his hands. He's physical. Like I think he's going to be able to make kind of key catches for them. He's not going to be, Stefon Diggs. He's not going to be a star in Buffalo, but he will be able to make these catches, pick up these ugly first downs. He's just I really like him. And
he's scrappy.
He's scrappy.
He's like he's speedy, he's scrappy.
Yeah, they lose Gabe Davis. Like I said, I don't give a rip about Gabe Davis unless it's the AFC Championship 2 years ago. Then absolutely give me Gabe Davis. If it's literally any other game ever, I don't care. Or like the once a season where he gets like 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, then everyone picks him up off waivers and fantasies and doesn't score again.
Every year. Every year that happens.
Yeah, and then, a guy I wanted to touch on a little bit just briefly is Khalil Shakir. I really liked the step that I saw him take last year at the receiver position, and it felt like he kind of emerged right on time with this Joe Brady thing. I saw some real special flashes from him. I don't know if he's going to be the one or the guy they drafted at the beginning of the second round, Keon Coleman, is going to be the one, or what the situation is going to look like. But I imagine there isn't going to be a one. And my question to you is, can Josh keep up this level of performance this year with this group, similar to what we've seen the last few seasons? Do you think it's possible, or do you expect a fall off?
I think it'll be possible mainly due to Joe Brady. I think Joe Brady will be able to cook up enough of a scheme that can really spread around the ball. I mean, we saw it, right? We saw it during those last 6 weeks, was like he started to get other people involved. And the knock on Josh Allen is like, well, look at his numbers without Stefon Diggs. And it's like, okay, but like that's a little unfair because he's had Diggs for a majority of his prime, like thus far. I'm not even sure he's in his prime yet, which is insane to say, but it's true. He's only been in the league for, 5 years, 5-6 years.
Yeah.
It's like, what are we truly expecting of the kid from the first couple of years? And at that point, nothing was the expectation for him at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Diggs, obviously, his numbers are a lot better with Diggs. That goes without saying. Diggs was like a top 2 to 3 receiver for a couple years there. But no, you're going to have to do what we've seen Mahomes do, especially like last year, which was like, just like a committee of wide receivers. Nobody was really a one. Kelsey's a one. That's we all know that. But like as far as like actual wide receivers, is Rashee Rice a true one? Was MVS a true one? No, hell no, they weren't. So you're gonna have to do the same thing. You're gonna have to use these guys in different ways. And let me just touch on one more thing. I think they made an interesting signing that nobody is talking about. And rightfully so, but it is interesting to me. They brought in Chase Claypool. The taste we have in our mouths from Chase Claypool is really bad, right?
You ready to tell me?
It's a bad taste. It's like Bears.
That
was stinky.
Like,
it was he went to the Dolphins and was an absolute nobody. Right. My thing is, like, we saw Chase Claypool in Pittsburgh be a good player. We know that he's got it in him. It seemed like it was more up here than it was actual physical. So the question I have is, can Claypool mature and understand that this is his last shot in the NFL? Because if he can do that, he might actually be a sneaky good signing. I'm not saying he's going to get 1,000 yards, but like if you told me he had 500 to 600 yards with 3 touchdowns, I think that's great for what you're bringing him in to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we've seen him do that. We've seen him do that before. So it's not.
Yeah,
it's not crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I actually think that this group in Buffalo is better than the group in Kansas City last year in terms of receivers.
Totally agree.
So I'm with you. I love Josh Allen, man. I think he's the best back in the league that we have, not named Mahomes. And to be honest, like I think so often, like week in and week out, he wows me more than Mahomes. Josh Allen wasn't drafted to Kansas City. No Andy Reid, no prime Tyreek Hill, no prime Travis Kelce. It was just a harder road. But in terms of talent, and I bet Pat would say this, honestly, if you gave him truth serum, in terms of talent and just ability to play quarterback, it's these two guys for me, and then it's then the rest of the list. And I believe in this man enough that I really just do think that he's special enough to elevate this group. And I think there's going to be some growing pains, but I think there's some talent here. I'm not in this camp of they lost everything, but I want to speak on something because I feel like we're almost like edging into it because the big conversation, and anybody watching this, if you just paid attention to like basic football news or watched ESPN ever or FS1 or followed any Instagram accounts that talk football, the big piece of news was it's over in Buffalo because the Bills traded Stefon Diggs. Diggs is gone. Allen's going to take a step back. It's over. And I think that's quieted a bit because people realized how dumb they sounded saying that. But I do want to – part of my frustration with just football narratives is like the dishonesty that travels around the world before the truth has a chance to put its pants on in the morning. And this just got repeated so much by like the Nick Wrights of the world that everybody just started saying it like it was a fact. And I disagree so strongly with this like idea that losing Diggs is this nail in the coffin for the Bills, that I just decided to start kind of digging into the season that he had last year. So I'm just going to get into this because I have to debunk this idea.
Let that chopper sing, baby.
Yeah, man. So Diggs is going to be 31 this season. Diggs is in Houston now, but last year Diggs was 30 during the season. So already we're flirting with being 30 and the reality of skill positions in the NFL at that age. I'm not saying he can't be good. I'm not saying that, Keenan Allen's not good. I'm not doing that, but we're already entering a weird territory of like, as Dr. Evil said, there's nothing worse than an aging hipster, right?
There's nothing more pathetic than an aging hipster.
It's like this guy's like such a noisy guy, but he's not 26 anymore. So it's like, you're 30 now. Like, he finished the season with 107 catches, 1,183 yards, and 8 touchdowns, which seems pretty good. It's not Tyreek numbers. It's not Lamb numbers. It's not Jefferson on a good year numbers. But it's like, okay, he had a good season. But you start to scratch the surface of this stat line, right? Because I just like everybody else, I looked at his stats from last year. I'm like, all right, he had over 1,000 yards. He had 8 touchdowns. He had 100 catches. Like, he had pretty good. What's interesting about it is he started the season off on an absolute tear. Like, he came out being a top 3, top 4, top, depending on the week, top 2, top 1 wide receiver in football last year. And it was looking like he was going to do it again and be a Pro Bowler, right? Teams losing games. There's meltdowns going on the sidelines. Do you remember training camp? He had like that weird thing where like McDermott sent him home and then they were asked about it. And he was like, oh yeah, it was just like a weird thing. It's being handled internally. It's like,
we had a good conversation, great communication. And we got to a point yesterday where we just felt like we all needed a break and some space. And so I gave Steph permission to get some space and head out, and then picked up those conversations after practice. So let me make it clear: it was not Steph leaving unexcused. He was excused by me.
You sent him home like this is elementary school. Like he got suspended. Like what happened?
He got suspended fully.
Yeah, we got no like weird. It was but the talk was getting loud in Buffalo that he was like becoming
very
like
noisy.
really really aggressive towards Allen and like disrespectful towards Allen. And you saw it in the London game with the blow up on the sideline. It was just getting weird, but he was putting up big numbers. So it was like, okay, I don't really know what to make of it. Like let him cook. What's interesting is week 7 on. Stefon Diggs had 0 games, with 100 yards receiving, and he only had 3 touchdown catches in that stretch. And in the final 8 games of the season, he had 1 touchdown catch. 1 touchdown, 8 games. So that's 4 quarters of football over 8 games that Stefon Diggs had 1 singular touchdown catch.
That's crazy,
and 0
bro.
games in a 10-game stretch, 10 games to finish the season out, 0 games with 100 yards receiving. I say all this to say he was kind of a non-factor down the stretch. And it really coincided and lined up kind of on time with this Joe Brady shift where we started seeing the ball and going, the running game started becoming efficient. The ball's getting spread out. Kincaid's getting involved. Shakir's getting involved. James Cook is getting involved. And Allen looked really good. And Stefon Diggs looked really fucking old and really irrelevant and really petty, really fast. I don't believe that this team is going to suffer without Stefon Diggs. I do believe that this receiving group is going to take a minute to gel as a unit independently of Stefon Diggs. Just like any group would, like last year in Green Bay, you saw the Dontavian Wicks, you saw the Jaden Reed, you saw the Christian Watson, the Romeo Doubs. These are all rookies and sophomores. It took a minute to gel. But it wasn't because Devontae Adams got traded the year before. You understand what I'm saying? It's like, I think independently of Stefon Diggs, this might take a minute to gel offensively. But I do not believe that in the long term or even the short term, as in like week 7, 8, 9 on, this team is going to miss Stefon Diggs. It felt like, you know, in movies, there's a scene where you just like the thing happens and you go, oh God, it's over. Like, oh, the main character, you just know something is like ominous is
Yeah.
coming. There was a
Yeah.
play towards the end of the Kansas City Buffalo playoff game last year. And Bills fans, I'm sorry to make you relive this,
Yeah.
but the game was
I know what play.
winnable. It was close.
Yeah,
It was a
it
close game.
was.
It was a back and forth. The Buffalo had a chance. And Josh Allen did what he did. He extended a play and he threw, I believe it was like a 45-yard, 50-yard.
It was a rocket.
It was
a
just,
rocket.
and it was like one of those, if it's made that catch,
Yeah.
you got a shot. Maybe you win that game. And it was just
Momentum
he dropped
shifter.
it. And it just felt like, I don't know about you, I wasn't that surprised by the Diggs trade because I remember that play and my mind immediately thought about that play. And I was sitting at home watching the game and I'm like, I feel like it's over. Like if they don't pull this game off, I feel like it's over. Like it just felt like the end. It felt like the breakup. It felt like the bad date when you tried to get back with your ex and you're sitting there and it's like, you fight instead at the restaurant and it's just like, all right, we're not getting back together. Like it's done.
Yeah.
And it was just one play. It was one moment, but everything was on the line in that moment and Diggs didn't deliver. And he didn't go back to Diggs after that. He didn't go back to him. And he should have. Like the game was still there. He still, there were still plays, there were still drives, there were moments left and he didn't go back to Diggs. It was like, I'm not throwing you the ball.
Yeah.
And I wanted to sort of have this rant because I'm seeing so much matter of fact, so much truth, so much narrative that it's over for Buffalo, it's over for Josh, and this team's going to take this huge step back because of Diggs. And I almost agree with you. I think losing their starting center, who was a locker room guy, who was a high-level offensive lineman, is a bigger loss than this. I go as far as to say it's addition by subtraction. And I think
Totally
he will
agree.
have some good games in Houston next year. But
he will.
it's not going to go on forever. So I just wanted to get that off because it's,
No, that catch felt like a moment where Josh Allen walks off the field and just looks at Brandon Beane and goes, "Get that motherfucker off my team."
Totally. But
You know
he's a
what I
nice
mean?
guy,
Like, it's
so he's
just
not
like,
gonna.
Yeah,
Like,
no, exactly.
But
It's
then,
just like,
Diggs
no,
goes
but
into the
even
offseason,
then,
he's
it's like,
tweeting again, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, get this
Boom.
guy out of here, man.
Yeah.
It's so over. So let's pivot into kind of our bold prediction and then, our record. Where do we see this going? Just to put a bow on this, because I feel like
Sure.
we've really touched on the key stuff with this team, but I want to know what you see in the end and what you predict is going to happen this year that other people might not see.
Yeah, I have a very, very, very bold prediction, and it's very outlandish, but
Do it.
I think, and I'll explain why. There was a thought process behind this.
Sure.
Last few years, we've seen this team not get over the hump at all, and I think that is the fan base is growing increasingly frustrated, particularly with their head coach Sean McDermott. I think that he's an easy scapegoat for the lack of success, especially when, like you look at the 13-second game, he's a defensive guy, right? And it's like the defense lets Mahomes go out there and win a game with 13 seconds left that you had won, right?
Yep.
And it almost seems like that cloud is still hanging over the head a couple
Can I
years
interject
later.
one thing?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I felt like, to give merit to what you're saying, I believe that leaks only come out when somebody wants a leak to come out within the organization. And that whole Osama bin Laden 9/11 storyline last year
It was very odd.
felt like somebody within the organization going, we're not firing you, but we are setting up the narrative just in case we decide to, that we're justified. It should never have gotten that. We should never have known about that. And I felt it was very interesting when we did. But go ahead.
Yes. No, I totally agree. I think you saw Joe Brady come in and this team turn around completely. Mm-hmm. And if you look at their schedule, so from weeks 4 to 15, you have Baltimore, Houston, New York Jets, Tennessee Titans, Seattle Seahawks, Miami, Indianapolis Colts, Kansas City, San Francisco, LA, and Detroit. Mm-hmm. That's a fucking gauntlet, bro.
Yeah.
That's a gauntlet.
There's
Especially
no dumpster teams in there.
None. So you just said, it's going to take a little bit for this team to gel, right? It's going to take a little bit for this offense to gel. They have about 4 weeks to gel. You know what I mean? Like they have 4 weeks to gel. You have 4 weeks to get Keon Coleman implemented into this system. You have, Curtis Samuel everybody implemented who needs to be implemented. I mean, obviously the guys who have already been there, they're going to have a leg up, but you have to get these guys going. I think I look at that 4-week stretch, the Kansas City, San Francisco, LA, and Detroit. I think it's very possible that they go 0-4 in that stretch. And I could see a week 15 leaving Detroit, losing a close game, the frustration boils over, Sean McDermott is fired, and Joe Brady takes over as the head coach.
Drop your credentials at the guard's desk and get the fuck out of here!
Interim
because
head coach.
Then you have interim head coach who will probably turn into your acting head coach. Again, this is outlandish. I'm just it's called bold predictions for a reason. I'm being bold.
Yeah.
I see the last 2 weeks or the last 4 weeks I think are like New England, New York Jets, New England again, and then some game week 17 that I don't remember, but that's kind of the perfect stretch to let a new coach kind of like see what he maybe can be. You know what I mean? Because then you're not tied to him. It's like if he goes out there and just goes like 0-4, it's kind of like, okay, well, this guy probably isn't the answer either. But if you can go out there and you can go 3-1 in that stretch, or there's a discernible difference between this locker room culture and from having McDermott out to Brady in, I could see it being the culture shift that they need. We're an offensive leaning league at this point. Like, it is what it is. These defensive coaches are kind of like afterthoughts. It's a lot of yesteryear. I mean, you look at the last couple of Super Bowls, like there hasn't been really like a there's like Spags defenses that are obviously always very good, but Andy Reid is the mastermind. You have Kyle Shanahan, mastermind. McVay, Andy Reid again. Zach Taylor. You have it's all Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell last year. It's like you have it's mostly offensive leaning. And I think the Ravens were a good example of a defensive leaning team probably last year, but even still, your quarterback won the MVP. So like, how defensive driven could you be? So I don't know. That's my bold prediction. I think McDermott will be out. I mean, maybe not that late, maybe not that early, maybe not at all, but I think he'll be out one way or the other.
Yeah, I think people will think that's outlandish, but I don't. So I'll give you a little copium there.
Sure.
I have a less outlandish take, but I do feel like when you put it in perspective, it seems kind of outlandish just because. The New England Patriots won the division 10 years straight, from 2009 to 2019. They won the division every single year. Since Tom Brady has left, so 2020, 2021, 22, 23, so that's 4 years in a row, you guys have won the division. And hats off. You took over the AFC East. It's really impressive. I think this year you don't. And I think this year you don't because there's another team who I'll leave on for another episode that I think will surpass you this year narrowly. And I know that I just said that this team's not taking a step back because of Stefon Diggs. That's not the reason. I just feel like it's a retool year. I don't give a rip about Stefon being traded. So, you know what everyone's going to do? Be like, oh, he contradicted himself. I don't think you're going to take much of a step back. I think you're going to take a game or two step back from last season. But you weren't that good last season. What's really interesting about last year is that before the week 10 kind of debacle where I discussed that they fired Dorsey and brought in Brady, they lost a lot of games early in the year, games that include the Denver Broncos, the New England Patriots, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and a Jets without Rodgers in week 1. You relied on what seems to be becoming partially reliable now, actually, and a bit like yearly, and more on them when we get to them. You relied on a Miami Dolphins December collapse, frankly. And you got hot at the end, and you won the division, and it was ended up being a net positive season. But I think this is the first year that you break the 4 in a row, and I don't think you're going to win the division this year. I think you'll be good. My record prediction is 10-7. I think you'll make a wild card. But I think you're going to come in second this year in the division. I'm with you. There's too much weird transition feel going on. I think it's going to be a good team, but they don't seem world beaters to me. And I think someone's going to come up this year out of that division that I like just a touch more. And we're talking a game or two split. I mean, it's not like you guys are going to be like mid. I think you're going to be good.
Yeah.
But my bold take is that it's not. This is the first year because it's just been you in New England since 2009. Nobody else has won it, and I think this year you don't. That's my prediction. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean. We love Josh Allen. He's one of my favorite players in football. I'm really excited to see what you guys do. Guys, please like, comment, subscribe. When I say comment, I really mean anything. If you hate this take, if you're Bills Mafia, like please just come in
we'll
and
argue with
on
you.
us. Like we don't care. Like
100%.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like this is about engaging. This is about like reach. This is about having conversations with other fans and getting to know like what you guys think. But
it's your fan base. We don't know everything. This is
a beer.
This is a day. This is a day of deep research.
Yeah,
that's really all it is.
But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Andy, good to see you. Good to chat about Bills Mafia, and
always
good luck next season to the Bills, man.
All right, brother.
Peace.
Peace.